We are back with my friends Patrick Casale and Anthony Barney, and we were just talking to Larry Harrison. You know, he called in from Washington, D.C. to tell us what's going on, and this whole reconciliation thing is pretty much a power play. You know, the Democrats, and I want you to remember this, don't think about D's and R's, think about Americans. And we have people that are in Congress right now that are willing to basically explode our country. They're blowing the place up because of their own political power. Really, I don't think anything else. It's just a whole agenda that they're, well, of course, it's the cultural Marxism that's moving forward, marching right through our lives. Patrick, comment on that.
Well, first of all, with the thing that's scary, with this reconciliation talk, if they pass this bill, there is no chance that if it's screwed up real bad, that some other president or some other Congress can go out there and change this bill. And the other thing that gets me is that they're looking to change the tax structure now, and this bill will go forward in 4 years. I don't understand.
I don't understand.
You know, and I'm more afraid that if it's broken, how do you fix it? And we may not be allowed to fix it, and that's really what I have an issue. But you have some interesting insight on this reconciliation, Anthony.
Well, the concern I have with the idea of reconciliation is, first, it was never intended for a mammoth bill of this size. There's been discussion that reconciliation was used in the past by Republicans when they had control of the House and the Senate. The problem with reconciliation is it was created for budgetary concerns and was not suited for a mammoth bill of this size, which unfortunately we don't actually know the version of the bill yet to this date that we're considering. There's been talk that there are anti-repeal provisions in the bill. Whether or not that will be deemed constitutional or not remains to be seen. But in the end, we look at it from the standpoint of, if it does go through this reconciliation measure, what can be done in the future to roll back many of the onerous provisions that are likely going to be slipped into the final version, which we don't have yet.
Who knows what's in there? But there's a question. There's a really good question. If they're proposing a bill, is there someone that they have to run this past to make sure it's constitutional? They pass the bill and then somebody challenges that it's not constitutional. How does that work?
Well, as we can see with the McCain-Feingold bill that just went through years ago, which the court declared partially unconstitutional, lawmakers will pass those bills and they'll leave it up to the courts to determine whether or not it's constitutional in the end.
That's awful. Why don't they try and adhere to the Constitution to begin with? Isn't that what the whole country is based on?
Well, unfortunately, with the partisan nature and the activist nature of many of the members of both the House and the Senate, they are going to pass bills that they believe will appease their constituencies. And they're less concerned about the constitutionality of these bills and more concerned about their interests.
You know, I bring that up. That's a good point. But you know what's interesting? If you look at certain numbers, like, for example, 89% of the American people are satisfied with their health plan. 11% are unhappy. It happens. But I call that a majority. And then when you consider all the rhetoric that we're hearing from the television, the radio, print, about how Americans don't really want this bill to pass, when you consider it's a bill established for a very minute proportion of the United States, some of which already have health care, because the lack of concept here is they think Medicaid isn't socialized medicine, but in fact it is for people who are indigent or financially unstable. There's so many layers of this issue. I mean, first of all, there's a statistic out there of the 100% of the pie, 50% of that pie at one time or another were in a situation where they made over $100,000 a year and chose not to buy insurance. Had a guy on my radio show yesterday who calls up the show and says, "Oh, I had to drop my insurance, it wasn't affordable," but he was talking in circles. By the end of the show, he's telling me how he was able to find affordable health insurance, that he needed a good health broker, because if you go online to find insurance, that's not the answer. And that's really the problem. I mean, we have a situation here where we need to be accountable. Why are people uninsured? Why are people insured? Some people are more responsible than others. Some people can't afford insurance. I mean, there's so many factors, so many layers.
But do you know there's actually a thing in this bill, because I went on, when it was on the internet, I don't know, 2 months ago or something, There's something in there that just says they can go into your bank account and extract the money. Like if you're having your tooth pulled, only thing it'll be even more painful. I always say if
That's
the
crazy.
government wants to wrap their arms around you, it's really a boa constrictor, and you're getting the life choked out of you. Can they do that?
If we allow it.
Well, I think anything is going to happen if we allow it, like Pat had indicated. The problem is we don't know what version of that bill we're looking at this point. And
No.
so I think it's premature really to maybe talk about specifics of maybe one version of the bill you may have looked at. But I think Pat hits on a greater issue, and that is the fact that as he talks about the fact that most Americans are satisfied with their health insurance, it brings up a larger issue in the context of when we look at this mammoth health care bill, are we indeed looking at the will of a majority of the people who have elected these officials to vote on this, or are we looking at a smaller group of ideologues who have set forth an agenda and are willing to pass this at all cost, whether that means losing their majorities in both the House and the Senate in order to do it, and whether or not they're looking at forcing resignations as a result in order to get this through. And
Well, they really have to fall on your sword. I mean, that's what they're being asked to do. But it depends which poll you look at. Between 62 and 67% is the way it generally trends. People do not want this, so they're just doing it anyway.
First of all, you have an attorney who does a lot of studying when he has to go to court.
Yes.
How can you expect somebody to read 2,700 pages in 2 to 3 days and come up with a viable answer and a solution out of those 2,700 pages?
There's
It's
one answer.
impossible.
You don't.
Right. So what are we doing? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And that's just part. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But why do we want government governing us? We elected these people. We've been hearing on television how our politicians are making deals with certain states. If they go along with this bill, they're going to get appropriations, allocations, whatever they're going to get. And that's graft, number one. Number two, you have people trying to make deals amongst each other. Let's make a deal. Let's do it. It's wrong. It's totally out of line. It's totally wrong. We should have the right to choose how we want to live within the laws that have already been established.
That's exactly right. And we should live by our Constitution. Now, I told you you're going to love my friends. What we want to do is we want to get you mad enough that you want to call Congress, that you want to email, because we want the army out there to stand up and be heard. And we want you to with your telephone and your email, and we want to take this country back, and we're not kidding around about it. We're dead bang serious. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.